Witness by Helen Lambert. Nature is the silent witness of my intuition. Nature sees my own readiness to be real when it's too tiring to be anything else. Nature smiles kindly at my vulnerability and my neurosis. She holds the space for deep reflection. She waits patiently for me to come to her, to breathe with her, to touch her. When I walk into her arms, she greets me with warmth and complete acceptance, an unconditional, loving embrace. She's my constant companion and intuitive guide. She knows me better than anyone, because she is me. She is you. She is the one. And when the world feels heavy and exhausting, I know deep inside I can retreat into her and be held in her arms. Witness by Helen Lambert. Thank you so much, Helen. It's a real honor to share your poem in this wild place of which I would love you to see at some point in your life. This marks a beautiful moment for me because it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, is launch a YouTube channel and share people's stories, share their poetry, share their stories of transformation in nature, so that a nature culture can emerge, a conscious nature culture where people are recognizing the benefits, the principles and the gifts that nature has. So for those other folk who send poems through, thank you so much, and I'll get to them. I'm heading into the forest next, preparing for the New Year's forest trip for men, and it'll be an honor to read them out. One of the things that this poem has triggered is, as I've been here during the last few days and holding a space for this amazing man that I just caught up with last night. He broke his solo. He's further up the coast. You might be able to see that point right in the distance. He's up there. And I've got radio, so yesterday or the day before we'd arranged that I would come and join him for dinner and to break his solo in a ceremonial way and have fire and hold space for a conversation with him and to check in, to catch his story. It's quite a vulnerable thing, really, to even talk about this, because it's so powerful. Yeah. But this dude has, taken himself miles up the coast and soloed like a Jedi. Like, he's fully gone in and done the work. He's taken himself through a massive breathwork session, and he's taken himself on this incredible journey. He's understood the importance of frame, the masculine, to hold his own feminine, so he can go deeply into those parts of life that need healing. And that's why I totally love reading people's poetry, and because a lot of the time that I spend out here I'm alone, like I'll send people off by themselves and I'm alone. But what I really want is a new culture of humans that go into nature together, and then solo, but like have 20, a community of 20 people coming out and then traveling the world as this kind of like, conscious community of just good humans that are wanting to harvest the principles and the gifts of nature. And so coupling this coupling this beautiful piece of poetry with my brother's journey as he's taking an age-old quest of being by himself, and yesterday he gave me the biggest hug, and he's like, man, wow, something massive has changed in me. And you know, I recognize my role in that, as archetypal guide, you know, distinguishing the journey and holding space. Like the archetypal guide, the guide's role is really just to ask the right questions of the other, to hold a space that's deeply motivated and oriented around that person's own wisdom. But the place has its own magic. And it's in this context that I want to talk about the transpersonal. The transpersonal nature of nature. And in particularly wild nature, because in wild nature, you know, it's untrammeled. It's untrammeled by modernity. This place has been completely shaped by Aboriginal mob. My deepest acknowledgements of their culture, because this place is a living testament to the brilliance and the depth of their culture, the sophistication. The Aboriginal women, the Tasmanian Aboriginal mob would be here during the winter time, and the Aboriginal women were diving. Can you imagine that in the winter time here? Harvesting shellfish, harvesting abalone, harvesting like sea snails, and then the men were out hunting, burning the landscape. But aside from that indigenous embodied community of, you know, enlightened humans, really, when we break it down, a lot of people sort of, you know, are always quick on the trigger to temper my romanticism of Aboriginal culture. I'm like, it ain't romantic. It's credit where credit's due. Nothing to do with romanticism. I like anesthetic. If I'm getting a tooth pulled, I get it. But it's credit where credit's due. 2,000 generations of people living in this landscape. That's credit. You know, I mean, I could go on for hours about it. And so, landscape, wild place in particular, because it has a boundary around it. It's spacious. Enables nature to play. It enables nature to dance and to play in a way that naturally occurs when we don't screw with it. And in the dance and in the play, like right now you're looking at a landscape that's completely calm and chilled out. But only 6 days ago, this place was raging. The swell was absolutely pumping, and the wind was, you know, intense. And the transpersonal nature of nature is this. It's space. Everything sitting in space, including my billy tea. I've lost my cup, so I'm just drinking out of the pot. It's space holding a dance of complexity. And so when the massive ocean swell comes in and bashes against the coast and destroys the kelp, the space doesn't complain about the destruction. The space itself is not identified with any one particular aspect of the complexity. The space is just holding everything. And every single aspect of the complexity is part of the diverse matrix that's necessary to in fact create beauty. That beauty itself is by definition diversity held in space and celebrated. So if we extrapolate out the principles from nature, much like in Helen's poem, because she is me, she is you, she is the one. What Helen's speaking to at a deeper level is the principle of the transpersonal, that my body is made up of the elements of place. And it'll go back to place. I came across a Australian fur seal up the coast, and just the skeletal remains, the vital nature of life and death, and knowing that will be my skeleton at some point. This body will be reduced to bone. Forgive the sniff. And so one of my deepest commitments is to make video content that actually honors the space. I don't want to cut short form video to suit small attention span. And if that's the case, I'd prefer that only a handful of people watch these videos. But those who do can really go deep into it and really feel like they're transported here. So if you imagine yourself in this landscape, and effectively what happens inside the transpersonal nature of landscape, it reminds us of the transpersonal nature of ourselves, that we are in fact incredibly complex creatures. And the degree to which we don't take ownership of certain aspects of our own psyche, and I love, Jungian archetypes, because it creates a frame, an ecological frame of self-examination that enables one to examine oneself in an ecological context. So those parts of self that are disowned can be recognized, and we can ceremonially perform rituals, if you like, in a landscape like this to support ourselves to transition from one life stage to another, and that's a rite of passage. The truth of a rite of passage is that rites of passage never end. We're not suddenly getting there, because when we get there, there's the next stage in front of us. And at the same time, we can just be present through the whole journey, but there are stages of growth. So the journey that I've been undertaking for the last 2 years, 2 years ago I came out here and I ran the second leap 6-month journey with men, and I shot my entire journey into, over the course of my solo of 6 days or whatever, in regard to my journey and my transition into King, for the first time really considering what does that even mean. And I took myself on a conscious walk with the King. I drew a line in the sand and I walked across that line and walked as the King, and it changed my life. I was like, wow, I have that archetypal King inside me. It just needs space to be explored, expressed, nurtured, supported. And that journey for me has been a couple of years of just getting familiar with what that feels like in my body, like at a somatic level. What does that even feel like? What does the King feel like? for me, the king feels responsible. I feel responsible. And I feel kind of dutiful to the internal kingdom. When I say king, I'm not talking about like Muhammad Ali. I'm talking about me, like the king of my kingdom, the archetypal king in me as an individual, not the king of others. That'd be weird. Archetypes are referring to the landscape. There's an entire kingdom in me with a whole bunch of loyal servants if I only enable them to come forward and have a voice and be expressed. And so the transpersonal nature of life, as shown in this spot here, for example, is exactly the same as the transpersonal nature of life in this spot here, in this spot here, in this spot here. I am life. I am life unfolding. And as Helen writes, and when the world feels heavy and exhausting, I know deep inside I can retreat into her and be held in her arms. And what I love about that is, you know, the framework that I offer men is one of, you know, the masculine being the space itself, which is eternal and goes on forever, and the feminine being the dance of complexity and change, or as Eckhart Tolle puts it so beautiful, the little Yoda. Love that little Yoda. What a little dude. He puts it so beautifully, and it really matches with all the Vipassana that I've done, which is like there's the world of form, you know, the Billy, the everything in physical manifestation, and there's the world of formless, which is that which you cannot see, but the space that holds everything. So when Helen writes about, you know, I can be held in her arms, the way that I look at life is that the masculine is the space and the feminine is the place. And by maintaining a good frame, like an internal frame that holds my journey, my own inner journey, much like a ship has a great frame to navigate an ocean swell. If I can hold a really good frame, which includes a routine, a practice in the morning, you know, that the frame is the organizational aspect of self that enables me holds me to account to give space to the feminine in me. And so when I come out here, the feminine in me can come online. And so one of the things that I wanted to share, I wanted to do a shout out to my dear friend Breeze, who's just moved here from the United States. And I wanted to say, Breeze, that I think it's been probably 10 years since I've read a book. Maybe 10 years. Maybe 2014. I read maybe something like David Data, something like that. Way of the Superior Man, I think, was the last book I ever read. Because mostly I listen to podcasts and not even audiobooks. But anyway, I wanted to say that this book, written by Robert A. Johnson, that my friend Breeze gave me on my journey into that masculine and feminine in myself, has been epic. Like that was amazing. Blew my mind, having not read a book for 10 years. 2014, 9 years. That totally blew my mind. And ultimately, the long story is the story of, you know, it's Jungian. So the story of anima and animus. And the internal anima being my own soul, my own feminine soul, and it being the ideal goddess, the queen. And what ends up happening is according to this Jungian analyst and Jung, is that we end up projecting, the man projects the anima. I'm pretty sure I've got this the right way. If I've got it the wrong way, then just reverse it. The man projects the anima onto the woman, the golden image of the woman, and expects her to show up as that anima, as that goddess, as that archetypal projection that's so deep and so strong. And the woman projects the animus, which is that archetypal inbuilt mechanism of like the divine man onto the man. And of course those projections can only hold up for so long. Inside this book he talks about the myth of Tristan and Isolde, and dives into that myth very skillfully. This book I think was written in the early 80s, 1983, something like that. It's an incredibly good book, really well written, so clear, so deeply considered every sentence. And so in that process, something enormous has come online for me, and it's like right in front of my face, but it's that the king in me needs to meet the queen in me, and I need to be responsible for that. I can't make another person responsible for that. But at an unconscious level, I think I always have. I've always projected that anima. You know, and I first came across this idea of anima via one of my favourite bands back in the late 90s, Tool. And I was like, and I looked into it a little bit, I'm like, what is that? Back in the time. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it's, 20 years later I make the time to actually analyse it, look at it, examine it. And it's more than just interesting, it's remarkable in terms of its transformational capacity. And so thank you, Helen. You've triggered a really deep reflection on the nature of the transpersonal journey, and your poem just happens to be so perfect. Here's a little welcome swallow. So perfect with the journey that I'm holding for this man. And of course, while I'm holding that journey for the man, I'm doing that work myself. I'm not sitting back and chilling out, like I'm undertaking my own journey, like walking my talk, not just sending him off and sitting here and eating Christmas pudding. Although some Christmas pudding would be pretty good right now because we're pretty low on food. But just full honour to this dude, because he got some abs yesterday, and we feasted like kings. We truly feasted like kings. And he's about to return back to camp, 11 o'clock, so I'm about to tap out and hold a space to really unpack the frame. Meaning, legacy, vision, mission, purpose. And he's articulated and gotten very clear on that, which has been his journey amongst a myriad of other things. But this frame is the thing that then enables, this is the vessel that can then carry me through the storm of my own feminine and the storm of life. The conscious clarity of who I am at a very deep level. Knowing what I want. Like, it's a massive question. What do you really, really want? What do you want? Like, mostly people don't really know when you ask them that question because they've never been asked the question. What do you see for the world? Like, it's a really important question. It's an enormously important question, and it doesn't get asked in culture. This is changing that. You can ask that question of anyone. No one's got a monopoly on this stuff. This stuff is a no-brainer, shall we say. I mean, what's the legacy that you want to leave? What's the legacy that I'm leaving in the moment? What's the wake of my energy, of my impact? It's either shit or it's empowering, and it's of a deep service to the world. Maybe it's a little bit of both at times, for sure. I certainly own that in myself. So as he returns today, we're going to drill in, and I'm going to offer just a deep listening for him to pull out the wisdom of his own knowing, his own self-knowledge. That's my role as guide. And when needed, prompt and provoke a little. So once again, thank you, Helen. I'm going to take a sip on my Billy tea. I'll just take it out through the nozzle here like this. I've run out of bonsai milk, so I'm now down to black Earl Grey tea with good Tasmanian honey, mate. So it's gone a bit cold, as long as there's a bit of honey in there. I prefer it with a bit of bonsai, but it's pretty good actually. Earl Grey tea. And yeah, I think this constitutes the final piece that I'm going to shoot from this journey. And for those people who are watching, thank you. Please subscribe if it's something that calls to you, and hit the notification thing, which means that you'll get notified when I upload more content, or when Brit uploads content. And as a quick throwaway before I tap out, the thing that I want to say is this channel is being kickstarted by us, but it's designed to be a hub. It's not designed to be the Darvis show. It's not what it's meant for. It's not designed to be the Brit show. It's designed for us to pioneer the space and build momentum and offer guidance to the degree of our ability, to the best of our ability, and then to offer it up to others. So our mission is, over the winter, we're going to jump in the 4-wheel drive, shoot around the country and host a conversation in regard to what does it take to bridge nature and culture. A very complex question, and one that requires your intelligence. This channel is for the people. This is an act of service. It's like we're dedicated to the people having a voice, knowing that it's a space for you to have your voice. So if you'd like to be interviewed, on this channel, we'll host a fireside podcast underneath the Natureculture banner to keep it all simple and neat and tidy, good frame. I'm going to start interviewing people in regard to this conversation, but just people who are in the game and on the court in this conversation. So feel free to recommend people that you might think. I'm starting to get a list together, one step at a time, and or send me your poetry, much like Helen's beautiful piece there that she custom sent. I feel very grateful for that. Your poetry, your stories of your own transformational experiences in nature. I would love to read stories. It's a big part of me as a storyteller. I love telling stories, and that gives the culture voice. And going forward, we've got a bunch of ideas where we want to open it up for people to make their own video content on here. One step at a time. We'll just get the foundations laid, but the more that you share this and spread it around, it makes it easier, because in frank terms, whilst I'm saying that, I want to keep it spacious and unedited to the best of my ability, it also needs to grow to support its momentum. And I'd love it to skyrocket. I just don't expect it. I don't have an entitlement, but I'd love that. I'd love to get tens of thousands of people subscribed to it so we can really hold a big conversation. So please share it around your friends. If you see a vision of a nature-informed culture, then this channel is designed to support that vision. That's all, folks. Until next one. Ciao for now.